The price of everything. You know what nobody tells you about marriage? How someone can just stop seeing you. Not like physically. Tyler was always there. Always present. Always doing exactly what he was supposed to do. But it's like one day he looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore. And when that happens, when you're invisible to the person who's supposed to love you most, you start making choices you never thought you'd make. Tyler and I met at this corporate holiday party in Denver. My friend Vanessa dragged me along because she was hooking up with some guy from his office. Tyler worked in IT or something technical. I never really paid attention to the details. What caught my eye was how he carried himself. Not cocky like most guys, but confident in this quiet way. He wore this charcoal suit that actually fit him properly. Had these intense green eyes that seemed to take in everything. When he started talking to me, he wasn't just waiting for his turn to speak. He asked about my work at the advertising agency, remembered details from earlier in our conversation, laughed at my jokes even when they weren't that funny. I'll give him credit. Tyler knew how to court a woman. Our first date was at this upscale steakhouse downtown. He'd clearly done his research, knew the wine list, had made reservations at the perfect time. I started testing him early, not on purpose. But looking back, that's exactly what I was doing. I'd mentioned wanting to try some new restaurant, and suddenly we'd have reservations there. I'd see a dress I liked while we were shopping, and it would show up at my apartment a few days later with a sweet note. The thing is, Tyler made decent money, and I had expensive taste. I'd grown up watching my mom clip coupons while my dad bought whatever he wanted, and I swore I'd never live like that. So when Tyler started covering every dinner, every weekend getaway, every little thing that caught my eye, I thought this is what real love looks like. He never complained, never made me feel guilty. If anything, he seemed energized by it. Like taking care of me gave him purpose. 6 months in, I moved into his place, this gorgeous 2-bedroom condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He cleared out half his walk-in closet without me asking, rearranged his entire living room to accommodate my furniture. I remember thinking this man really wants to build something with me. The proposal came 18 months later at that same steakhouse where we'd had our first date. He'd had the ring custom designed, remembered every single detail about what I'd mentioned wanting when we'd walked past jewelry stores months earlier. It was perfect. 2 carats? Princess cut. Platinum setting? I said yes before he even finished the question. Planning the wedding showed me who Tyler really was, though I didn't understand it then. He let me and my mom handle everything. Just showed up when we needed him to make decisions or write checks. At the time, I thought he was being supportive, letting me have my dream wedding. The wedding cost more than most people's cars, and Tyler never questioned a single expense. Looking back, maybe that should have been a warning. Not that he was generous, but that he seemed to have no opinions about anything that mattered to him. The honeymoon in Tuscany was everything I dreamed of. But even then, there were moments where I'd catch Tyler staring out at the vineyard, completely lost in thought. I'd ask what was on his mind, and he'd just smile and say nothing, just taking it all in. I thought it was romantic then. Now I know it was the beginning of him checking out, even when he was sitting right next to me. The first 3 years of marriage were good. Not perfect, but good. Tyler continued being this steady, reliable presence. He handled the bills, maintained the condo, planned thoughtful date nights. But somewhere around year 3, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, no big fight, no major incident. It was more like watching someone slowly turn down the volume on their personality until you could barely hear them anymore. Tyler started coming home later from work, claiming bigger projects and tighter deadlines. When he was home, he'd retreat to his home office or bury himself in his phone. Our conversations became these surface-level exchanges about schedules and household stuff. The intimacy didn't disappear overnight, but it became mechanical. Like he was going through the motions of being a husband without actually being present for any of it. I tried talking to him about it, but Tyler had this way of deflecting that made you feel like you were being dramatic. Everything's fine, Lindsay. Just work stress. Or I'm just tired. Babe, nothing to worry about. He'd give me these reassuring smiles that never reached his eyes, then change the subject to something safe like weekend plans or what to order for dinner. The worst part was how he started nitpicking everything I did. How I loaded the dishwasher. How I folded his shirts. The way I squeezed the toothpaste tube. Little comments disguised as helpful suggestions. But they stung. Hey babe, the dishes get cleaner if you face them toward the center. Just so you know, my dress shirts last longer if you fold them this way. Always delivered with this patient tone, like he was teaching a child. I started feeling like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Tyler never raised his voice, never got openly angry, But there was this constant undercurrent of disappointment. Like I was failing some test I didn't even know I was taking. When I'd get frustrated and ask him directly what was wrong, he'd look at me with this confused expression and say, "Wrong. Nothing's wrong. Why would you think something's wrong?" That's when I asked for the break. I couldn't handle living with someone who treated me like a roommate he was mildly irritated with. "I need some space to figure things out," I told him. Tyler just nodded, like he'd been expecting it. "Whatever you need," he said. "Take all the time you want." He moved into a short-term rental across town within a week, leaving me alone in our condo with all my thoughts and frustrations. The break was supposed to help me miss him. Instead, it felt like I could breathe again. No more tiptoeing around Tyler's moods. No more analyzing every interaction for signs of his disapproval. I started going out with friends again, staying up late, sleeping in on weekends. For the first time in months, I felt like myself. That's when I found the Pen Pal website. I wasn't looking for anything, just browsing online late one night when an ad popped up about connecting with people who needed support. The site was for corresponding with inmates, people who were isolated and looking for genuine connection. Something about that appealed to me. The idea of talking to someone who would actually listen, who would appreciate the conversation instead of treating it like an obligation. Kyle's profile caught my attention immediately. He was serving time for some financial crimes, white-collar stuff, nothing violent. His photo showed this ruggedly handsome guy with dark hair and intense eyes. But it was his writing that hooked me. His messages were thoughtful, articulate, full of questions about my life and dreams. He wanted to know about my work, my interests, my thoughts on everything from movies to philosophy. When was the last time Tyler had asked me what I thought about anything? Our correspondence started innocently enough. Kyle would write these long, detailed letters about books he was reading, observations about human nature, questions about the outside world. I found myself looking forward to his messages, rushing to check my email every morning to see if he'd written. He made me feel interesting again, like my opinions mattered. When I told him about my problems with Tyler, Kyle didn't dismiss my feelings or suggest I was overreacting. He listened. He understood. He validated everything I was experiencing. After 2 months of letters, Kyle started calling. The prison allowed inmates to make collect calls, and I found myself accepting every single one. His voice was deeper than I'd expected, with this slight rasp that made everything he said sound intimate. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. Kyle had this way of making me laugh that I'd forgotten I was capable of. He was charming, attentive, genuinely interested in every detail of my day. The conversations gradually became more personal. Kyle would tell me how beautiful I sounded, how lucky Tyler was to have me, how any man would be crazy not to appreciate a woman like me. And when I sent him photos, innocent ones at first, just regular selfies, he'd respond with these passionate messages about how stunning I was, how I deserved to be worshipped, not ignored. I started sending Kyle money for commissary items, just small amounts at first, $20 or $30 so he could buy decent coffee or snacks. But when he mentioned how much the other inmates respected him, how having a woman like me supporting him elevated his status, I started sending more, 100 here, 200 there. Tyler never monitored our accounts closely, and I had my own credit cards. Kyle was grateful in ways Tyler never was, sending me heartfelt thank you messages that made me feel needed and appreciated. The physical attraction was undeniable, even through letters and phone calls. Kyle had this way of describing what he wanted to do with me when he got out that made my heart race. He painted these vivid pictures of the life we could have together, the adventures we'd go on, how he'd treat me like the queen I deserved to be. It was everything Tyler wasn't giving me. Passion, excitement, genuine desire. 4 months into my break from Tyler, I was completely consumed by my relationship with Kyle. I'd wake up thinking about his letters, fall asleep replaying our phone conversations. Tyler would text occasionally to check in, these bland messages asking how I was doing, if I needed anything. I'd respond with equally bland replies, all while my heart was racing from Kyle's latest message or call. That's when Tyler showed up at my door, crying, actual tears streaming down his face. Something I'd seen maybe twice in our entire relationship. "I miss you so much. Lindsay, I've been an idiot. I know I haven't been the husband you deserve, but I want to fix this. I need you to come home." The timing was perfect. Actually, Kyle was getting out in 3 months, and we'd started making plans, real plans. He'd found a way to get released to a halfway house, and we'd been discussing how to handle the transition, but I needed Tyler to trust me completely, to not be watching my every move or questioning my activities. A reconciliation would give me the perfect cover. I let Tyler grovel for a while, let him make all these promises about changing and being better. Then I agreed to come home, but with conditions. I needed space to rebuild trust. I needed him to respect my independence. I needed him to stop micromanaging every aspect of our life together. Tyler agreed to everything, so grateful to have me back that he would have agreed to anything. The 2 months after our reconciliation were like a performance. I played the role of the loving wife working to repair her marriage while secretly planning my exit strategy. Tyler, true to his word, gave me space. He stopped questioning where I went or who I talked to. He was so focused on proving he'd changed that he didn't notice I was more distant than ever. Kyle and I refined our plan during those 2 months. He'd be released to a halfway house, but the restrictions were minimal. He could work, travel freely during certain hours, even date. We figured out how to access Tyler's life insurance policy, a substantial amount that would set us up comfortably. Kyle had connections from prison, people who could help with the more complicated aspects of our plan. All I had to do was make sure Tyler was home alone at the right time and leave the back door unlocked. The beauty of it was how simple it would be. A home invasion gone wrong, Tyler would resist. There would be a struggle, and tragically, my husband would be killed defending our home. I'd be devastated. Of course, the grieving widow who'd just reconciled with her beloved husband, only to lose him to random violence. Kyle would comfort me through my grief. And after a respectful period, we'd start our new life together with Tyler's insurance money and the proceeds from selling the condo. I felt no guilt about it. Tyler had emotionally abandoned me years ago. He'd turned me into this needy, desperate version of myself, constantly seeking approval from someone who could barely be bothered to look at me. Kyle saw my worth, appreciated my value, wanted to build something real with me. Tyler was just an obstacle to the life I deserved. The plan was set for a Tuesday evening when Tyler would be working from home. Kyle would be visiting a friend according to his halfway house check-in, but he'd actually be handling our situation. I'd be at book club with Vanessa, giving me the perfect alibi. Everything was arranged, every detail accounted for, but Vanessa ruined everything. She called me the Monday before, panicked and upset. "Lindsay, I need to show you something. Can you meet me for coffee right now?" Her voice was shaking, and I knew something was seriously wrong. We met at this little cafe near her apartment, and she pulled out her phone with this grim expression. I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but I can't live with myself if I don't. She showed me screenshots of messages between Kyle and some woman named Destiny. Messages where Kyle was bragging about his rich widow who was funding his new life. Messages detailing our entire plan, including specifics about Tyler's insurance policy, and when the accident would happen. Apparently, Destiny was Kyle's real girlfriend, someone he'd been with before prison, and planned to reunite with after his release. She was getting jealous about all the attention he was paying me, so Kyle had explained that I was just a mark, a lonely, desperate housewife who was so starved for attention that she'd do anything for him, including murder her husband. The messages were brutal. Kyle describing me as pathetic and clingy, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate me. He called me the perfect patsy and joked about how I was so desperate for validation that I'd believe anything he told me. There were details about our phone conversations, intimate things I'd shared with him, all twisted into jokes for Destiny's entertainment. But the worst part was reading his real plan. Kyle never intended to split Tyler's insurance money with me. Once Tyler was dead and I'd collected the payout, Kyle planned to blackmail me for the entire amount. He had recordings of our phone calls, copies of every message I'd sent, documentation of every dollar I'd given him. If I didn't hand over the insurance money, he'd turn everything over to the police and let me take the fall for Tyler's murder while he disappeared with Destiny. I sat in that cafe staring at those screenshots, feeling like my entire world was collapsing. Everything I'd believed about Kyle, about our connection, about the life we were going to build together, all of it was a lie. I wasn't his partner, I was his victim. And I'd been so eager to believe someone finally saw my worth that I'd nearly destroyed my life for a fantasy. Vanessa was watching me with this mixture of pity and concern. "I'm so sorry. Lindsay, I know you cared about him, but you need to know the truth. This guy is dangerous. You have to go to the police." But I couldn't go to the police. How do you explain that you were planning to have your husband murdered without implicating yourself? How do you admit that you'd been so desperate for attention that you'd fallen for the most obvious con in the world? I was trapped, and Kyle knew it. Even if I backed out of our plan, he could still destroy my life with everything he had on me. That's when I made the decision that probably saved Tyler's life and ruined mine, and I had to tell Tyler everything. Not because I wanted to, not because I felt guilty, but because it was the only way to protect both of us from Kyle's real plan. I went home that night and found Tyler in his office, working late as usual. He looked up when I walked in, gave me that polite smile he'd perfected over the years, and, "Hey, babe, how was book club? We need to talk." I said, "And you're going to want to sit down for this." I told him everything. About Kyle, about the money I'd been sending, about our plan to kill him for the insurance money. Tyler's face went through about 10 different expressions as I talked. Confusion, disbelief, horror, anger, and finally this cold calculation that I'd never seen from him before. "Let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "You've been planning to have me murdered so you could run off with some convict you met online, but now you're telling me because you found out he was planning to screw you over too." "Tyler, I know how this sounds, but no," he interrupted. "I don't think you do know how this sounds. This sounds like my wife of 5 years was willing to have me killed for money. This sounds like the only reason I'm still alive is because your boyfriend turned out to be smarter than you." I tried to explain about feeling neglected, about how Kyle had made me feel valued and appreciated, about how Tyler had pushed me away with his coldness and criticism. But Tyler wasn't interested in my explanations. He was already on his phone, calling someone. "Who are you calling?" I asked. "The police," he said, and then my lawyer. The next few hours were a blur of uniforms and questions and Miranda rights. Kyle was arrested at the halfway house, and they found everything: recordings of our calls, printouts of our messages, detailed plans about Tyler's schedule, and the layout of our condo. The evidence was overwhelming, and Kyle immediately started trying to cut a deal by claiming I was the mastermind who'd manipulated him into the whole scheme. I spent 2 days in jail before my parents posted bail. 2 days of sitting in a concrete cell, thinking about how completely I destroyed my life. Not just my marriage, that was obviously over, but everything. My job, my reputation, my future. All for a man who'd seen me as nothing more than a convenient mark. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Kyle took a plea deal and got additional time added to his sentence. I was charged with conspiracy and attempted murder for hire. My lawyer managed to get the attempted murder charge dropped, but I still faced serious prison time for conspiracy. Tyler filed for divorce immediately. Of course, he froze all our joint accounts, moved out of the condo, and refused to speak to me except through lawyers. I tried reaching out to him once, thinking maybe I could explain how sorry I was, how Kyle had manipulated me, how I'd never really wanted Tyler to get hurt. But Tyler's lawyer sent a cease and desist letter, warning me that any contact would be considered harassment. The divorce was swift and brutal. Tyler got everything: the condo, most of our savings, even my car since it was in both our names. I was left with my legal fees, my shame, and a criminal record that made finding employment nearly impossible. I ended up taking a plea deal too, 3 years probation and community service in exchange for a guilty plea to conspiracy charges. No prison time, but a felony conviction that would follow me forever. The judge made it clear during sentencing that I was lucky to avoid jail, that attempting to arrange someone's murder was among the most serious crimes she'd ever seen. Tyler disappeared completely after the divorce was finalized. He moved to another city, changed jobs, deleted all his social media accounts. I heard through mutual friends that he was doing well, that he'd started therapy, and was working on rebuilding his life. Good for him, I guess. At least one of us got a fresh start. As for me, I'm still here, still dealing with the consequences of the worst decision I've ever made. I lost my job when the story hit the local news. I lost most of my friends when the details came out. My parents still speak to me, but there's this distance now, this disappointment that hangs over every conversation. I moved into a studio apartment across town, took a job at a call center that doesn't do background checks. I keep my head down, do my community service, and try not to think about how different things could have been. Not if I'd stayed with Tyler, that marriage was dead long before Kyle came along. But if I'd been smarter about recognizing a con artist, if I'd valued my own life enough not to throw it away for someone else's fantasy. People ask me if I regret what I did, if I feel guilty about trying to have Tyler killed. The answer is complicated. I regret getting caught. I regret trusting Kyle. I regret not seeing through his manipulations sooner. But do I regret wanting out of a marriage that was slowly killing my soul? Do I regret wanting someone to see my worth and appreciate what I had to offer? No. I don't regret wanting more than Tyler was willing to give me. I just regret how I went about trying to get it